It's the opening weekend of NFL 2022 season, and we have some history that's going to be made. A great author, historian, and journalist, Jason Reed, joins us to tell us all about how history will be made, coming up in just a moment.
This is the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch, a podcast that covers the anniversaries of American football events throughout history on a day-to-day basis. Your host, Darren Hayes, is podcasting from America's North Shore to bring you the memories of the gridiron, one day at a time. So as we come out of the tunnel of the Sports History Network, let's take the field and go no huddle through the portal of positive gridiron history with PigskinDispatch.com.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Hello, my football friends. This is Darren Hayes of PigskinDispatch.com. Welcome once again to the Pig Pen, your portal to positive football history. We have a great episode coming on today as we are going to talk about something very relevant to the NFL as we start the season here, and that is the rise of the black quarterbacks. And that's the title of a book by our guest today, Mr. Jason Reed. Jason Reed, welcome to the Pig Pen.
Hey, thank you for having me in the Pig Pen.
Well, we tried to clean it up a little bit. We don't have too much mud flying around here. We had a good cleaning day yesterday. So we appreciate you coming on, sir, and talking about this very relevant topic because this weekend, you've pointed out there is some history being made. So we're glad to have you on.
Thank you. Yeah, this weekend, there'll be 13 minority quarterbacks starting in the NFL, 11 of whom are black, and that's the most in both categories ever in terms of minority starting quarterbacks and black starting quarterbacks in week one. So definitely a significant day for the league in terms of the evolution of that position.
Before we get discussing in that, maybe you could give us a little bit of who you are and how your football fandom grown to the point of writing a book.
Yeah, well, I've been a football fan as long as I can remember. Grew up in New York City initially, and with my brothers, we used to root for the Bill Parcells, Lawrence Taylor, Phil Simms-led New York Giants teams that won a couple of Super Bowls in the late 1980s and early 1990s.
There's some great teams.
Oh my goodness! Lawrence Taylor made me a football fan. Not just a football fan, but also his play piqued my interest in how football works, the various positions and how it all works together in terms of an edge rusher and a cover corner and a three technique tackle. So all that type of stuff, it piqued my interest. And I played football in high school, wasn't good enough to play in college, but I've always been interested in football. And I remember that when I was in high school, while I was on my team, I also got in the student newspaper. And I just realized early on I wanted to be a sports writer and I wanted to cover the NFL, and went to college out in California. Then for most of my career, for a big chunk of my career, I should say, I was a sports writer at the LA Times. But I didn't get to cover football out there because the Rams and the Raiders had left. And so I covered Major League Baseball. I covered the Los Angeles Dodgers. Then I finally went east to work for the Washington Post. They offered me the job covering, at the time, the name of the team was the Washington Redskins, and I covered the Washington Redskins for 3 years, and then I became a sports columnist, and my job primarily was to travel with the Redskins and write about them because that's the biggest thing in Washington D.C. Left the Washington Post in 2014, I believe, 2014, and became a senior writer at I became an NFL columnist at ESPN.com, and then I moved over from ESPN.com, and I also work now for what was called The Undefeated. Now it's called Anscape, where I'm a senior NFL writer covering the NFL, and I also still work for ESPN.com as well. So that's how I got to this point.
Wow, that is quite a resume you have there, and you have a lot of frequent flyer miles, I'm sure, too, going from one coast to the other. Fantastic. Now, I guess being a journalist, one of the things that have a great story is the timing and the relevance to the readers. And boy, you put a book out right at the right time for the relevance of what's happening here. Like you said, a historic moment, having 13 minority quarterbacks, 11 of them black, coming to start in the NFL week 1. And that's just a fantastic timing on your part and a great story. So we're glad that you could have a little bit of time here to talk with you about it.
No, thank you. Yeah, it's interesting how, like you said, timing, how things work out. I've been telling people, I've been doing so many interviews for the book, and it's such a great thing to be able to talk about your work when you feel passionate about your work and things that you've done. And I've been telling people in every interview that I do that we are now in the era of the black quarterback. And what I mean by that is you look at the league and the way it is now. Look, there are always going to be great white quarterbacks too, don't get me wrong. And what will truly be great is when we get to a point when none of this stuff even matters anymore, where no one even thinks about saying, hey, it's week 1, it's a record number of minority quarterbacks and a record number of black quarterbacks. But I think it's still important at this point because of the historical significance and how far we've come. I said we're in the era of the black quarterback. You look at the league and how many superstar black quarterbacks they are, and there are right now, and these guys have the biggest contracts and the faces of teams. They have enormous platforms. And it's not just the Patrick Mahomes and the Russell Wilsons and Dak Prescotts. You look at the young guys now. I mean, Trey Lance in San Francisco has been handed the keys to the car. Justin Fields in Chicago. And you look at the pipeline now. That's why I really point to this being the era of the black quarterback, because if you turn on, like, I'm a football fan, period. I love the NFL, but I also love watching college football. I went to USC, so I got to follow college football.
And listeners, you can't see it right now, but he has an SC ball cap on. So
yeah, I have an SC ball cap on. You look at the traditional college powers, the Alabamas, the Ohio States, USC, if it can get back to where it used to be, all led by superstar black quarterbacks or black quarterbacks who could be superstars. But it's not just those schools. You turn on the TV right now, Florida State, Clemson, LSU. Black quarterbacks everywhere. I'm an old newspaper guy, and I started out covering high school football and high school recruiting. And I remember when I would go to the elite, camps for the rising quarterbacks, the 4-star and 5-star prospects, you'd never see black kids at these things. Now there are black kids all over these camps. So from youth football to high school to college to the NFL, there, like I said, there are always going to be great white quarterbacks as well. We saw one Thursday night. Actually, I'm out here in LA right now. I was out here for the opener, the Chargers, the Rams versus the Bills, and you see what Josh Allen did. But we're at a point right now where it would not be surprising if in the next 5 to 8 years, there are as many as 12 to 16 superstar black quarterbacks in the NFL. And that's just such a change from the way things used to be.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at the history of what's been happening, like you said, and there's been some great quarterbacks that have we have Warren Moon and Doug Williams and Randall Cunningham, just to name a few. I'm from Western Pennsylvania, so I can remember Joe Gilliam, who had all the promise in the world and was very talented. And even going back further in history, not necessarily quarterbacks, but you had Charles Follis and Fritz Pollard, Willie Strode, Bill Willis opening up doors. So now these doors are being opened up, and with these great talented quarterbacks, like we mentioned, a few that are playing this weekend, and I think that's just a great thing to, like you said. Let's get rid of this whole color thing in football, because it really doesn't happen in the locker room. Any locker room I've gone to, people really don't talk about it. It's outside of the locker room, outside of the football field mostly. And I'm glad that this world can be cleansed and we're all just people. And I think that's a great thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree.
Now, maybe if you could, you mentioned a few of their names. If you could give credence to these players that are starting this weekend that you're mentioning, the 13.
Yeah. Well, Patrick Mahomes, who at who, when he won the Super Bowl a couple of years ago, became the youngest player in NFL history, then at only 24, to have a Super Bowl trophy, a Super Bowl MVP award, and a league MVP award, because he won the AP MVP award the year before he won the Super Bowl. Lamar Jackson, only the second quarterback in the history of the AP MVP voting to be a unanimous winner. A guy named Tom Brady was the other one. You look at Russell Wilson, a future Hall of Famer. Dak Prescott, who leads America's team, the Dallas Cowboys. You look at Kyler Murray, who AP Offensive Rookie of the Year, a two-time Pro Bowler. Trey Lance, who I mentioned, the San Francisco 49ers traded up in the draft to get him a few years back. They're giving him the keys into the car, and they're going to say, hey, take off with this thing. Justin Fields in Chicago. Jacoby Brissett in Cleveland, who is starting in place of Deshaun Watson, who's been suspended because he violated the NFL personal conduct policy. But I mean, Deshaun Watson has the biggest guarantee in the history of the NFL in terms of contracts. And then, other guys, Tua in Miami.
I just call him Mr. Tua because I don't want to discredit his family name.
Exactly. In Miami, Marcus Mariota is starting. So, it's a great time, because what it shows is that, when people are given an opportunity to compete based upon their ability, their intellect, their individual skills, that anybody can rise up based upon their ability, as long as they're given an opportunity to compete.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those are great names. A couple that you have on your list also, Jameis Winston and Geno Smith are also scheduled to start. And we have a lot of great quarterbacks that are on the rise that probably aren't starting this week. I mean, you already mentioned Deshaun Watson, superstar there. We just had here in the Western Pennsylvania area, they just announced about an hour ago, Pittsburgh is going to honor Dwayne Haskins, who departed our life here just a few months back by wearing a number 3 on the back of their helmets in honor of him. So, some great superstars.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very, tragic story. A guy who, had all the promise, Washington drafts him number 1. He was in that same draft where Kyler Murray was selected first overall. The Washington drafts him in the first round. It's very unfortunate that organization stability, is not synonymous with that organization. And he was in a situation where he made some mistakes in terms of the things that you want a number 1 draft pick to come in and do, but it will also not help because of the instability in the organization. Winds up going to Pittsburgh, and we all know, died tragically recently. So I think that's a very classy move by the Steelers, but that's not surprising with that organization.
Yeah, it very tragic indeed. But but we all do knucklehead things when we're young men at 20, 21 years old coming out of college. I can raise my hand and say I probably did some stupid things too, just wasn't in the public spotlight like these guys are. And, they're the press is not anything against the press. So,
well, I know. Point well taken. Yeah, I hear you.
But they're under tremendous pressure to perform and to be these role models. And they're just kids, and they're just coming out of school. And I can't even imagine the pressure.
It's a lot. And, when he was at Ohio State, you looked at the things he did. And as it turned out, it would have been better for him to stay in school for another year, probably. But, he wanted to come into the league. And, and again, I just think that organization, the way they handle things, are just such a classy organization. They do things the right way. So I'm not surprised they're doing this.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? With we don't have that tragedy. We might have a 14th starter this year. Who knows? That was going to be a pretty good competition, I think, with all 4 of them. Of course, they hadn't drafted Pickett yet. They might not have drafted him, or maybe they did. I can't remember if that might have been after the draft.
No, he died after they drafted him, I believe.
Okay. Yeah. So
no, I'm sorry. He died before they drafted him.
Right. So they might not have used that draft pick on a quarterback. So they might have won that competition. So
yeah, you just don't know.
Yeah, that's for sure. Okay. So we, had one game in the books when we're recording this. We're doing this the Friday after the Thursday game. So we have a whole slate of NFL games coming up here. Do you have any preseason favorites that you want to talk about before the season gets going?
Well, listen, I mean, anybody who'd go against the Buffalo Bills after that game last night, I covered the game. I was sitting in the stadium and Josh Allen makes throws that you just say, well, somebody, that big with that type of arm talent, arm strength, and also the type of athleticism he has. I mean, he's a beast, and you add Von Miller to that defense. And look, the Los Angeles Rams had some problems along their offensive line from a protection standpoint. But I think it was more the Buffalo Bills defensive front than it was that the Rams offensive line was just that bad. I mean, they were just physically dominated. I mean, there's just no other way to put it. The Bills have been a chic Super Bowl pick for some time now, and I don't think it's just chic. I mean, I think that if this team can stay healthy, they're going to be a bear for the whole AFC. I'm very interested to see what happens in a few weeks. Well, actually not a few weeks. I believe it's October 16th when the Bills will go to Kansas City again. We remember that AFC playoff game last year that was just one of the best football games I've ever seen, if not the best.
How many times did you close the book in the last 2 minutes of that game thing? Okay, we got a winner. Oh, no, we don't have one. I know. Listen,
I did that several times. And the thing about that game, I was going to cover that game and I said, no, I'll wait to the AFC Championship game. And I was kicking myself after that because that was, maybe there was a better NFL game ever played. I don't know where it was though. And I mean, that thing was just incredible. But the Bills, the Chiefs, I'm really going out on a limb here in terms of teams that could be, and I still think the Rams. Look, they play 17 of them now. Okay, so I don't think you just write off the Rams after one game. Sean McVay has proven that he knows how to get this thing done. Yeah, they got to get some things straightened out along that line. But I'm not going to say that the Rams can't get there. I think the Buccaneers, and obviously with Brady, you got to think that, there's a shot there. You got Rodgers in Green Bay still. So even without Devontae Adams, Aaron Rodgers, if Aaron Rodgers had a couple more Super Bowls by his name, we might be talking about him as the greatest of all time, because he's, from a talent standpoint, even I think Tom Brady will acknowledge Aaron Rodgers is better. Brady is the most successful quarterback of all time. And I hate to get into this whole thing about, you can't argue against Brady's 7 Super Bowls. But, I remember talking to old time scouts and player personnel people, and, they've told me there's no better prospect in the history of the game than John Elway. So, you can talk about that. You can talk about Rodgers. And I know I'm kind of going all over the map here, but I think the teams that you'd look at are the teams everybody knows: Buffalo, Kansas City. The Chargers could be a chic pick to come out of the AFC. And then, in the other conference again, I still think you got to look at the Rams. I think you still got to look at Tampa Bay and Green Bay. Dallas, with that Tyron Smith injury, I just don't see it now. But anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Well, I think those are some pretty strong picks, and that's some pretty great teams you're talking about. Before we let you go, let's make sure that folks know, name your title of your book again, if you could, please, and where they can, where it's available for them to purchase.
Oh, I really appreciate that. Title of the book: Rise of the Black Quarterback: What It Means for America. And people can get the book wherever books are sold: Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, Target.com. I like to support my local bookstores because I like to read. So support your local bookstores. And people can follow me if they choose to at JReed ESPN on Twitter, and at ESPN.com and Anscape.com.
Okay. And folks, if you're driving, can't write something down at the time, don't worry. We'll put these links in the show notes of this very podcast, so you can get in touch with Jason, know what he's going on, get his book, and have the links to get to his book too. And make sure you buy that book. It's a very good one indeed, and very timely. Jason Reed, very happy to have you on, very honored to have you on today, and appreciate your time, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me, and I appreciate you.
Peeking up at the clock, the time's running down. We're going to go into victory formation, take a knee, and let this baby run out. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you back tomorrow for the next podcast. We invite you to check out our website, pigskindispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. Pigskindispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. A special thanks to the talents of Mike and Gene Monroe, as well as Jason Neff for letting us use their music during our podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.